Stephen Mailer, the term Pharaoh is used for the high ruler of ancient Egypt. Can you tell us where the word Pharaoh comes from
Yes,
and why it is also not a correct term for a leader of the ancient Egyptian culture?
this is one of the most difficult things that is misunderstood. I say everyone, including myself, has used the term incorrectly. Again, Pharaoh, as we know the modern word, is a Greek derivation, as most of the terms that came out of the ancient civilization. Pharaoh, actually Hebrew word pero, and it referred to the male leader of the house, as you suggested. But what we understand is that this is basically what we call Greco-Roman mythology, which is Egyptology. They never asked the indigenous people what their tradition was. And as Hakim taught in what we now call chematology, the civilization was matriarchal. Descent went from mother to daughter, never father to son. And so the term pharaoh actually comes from the ancient Comitian term per-ah, the high house, which was the woman's house. Again, descent going from mother to daughter. So in essence, we say there never were any male pharaohs. All the term has been used wrong. The woman was the per-ah, the high house. And by who she chose to be her consort, he would be considered the male head of the house. And that's who's depicted on the walls. That's whose titles we see in cartouches. But never was he referred to in the ancient civilization as pharaoh. He was the male head of the house, the Horus. She was the per-ah. So we've all used the term wrong, and it continues to be wrong today when people say Pharaoh Ramses, Pharaoh Tutmos. There was no such thing. There were no male pharaohs.
So, Stephen, if we have misunderstood the idea that ancient Egyptian culture was matriarchal and not patriarchal, when did the concept of patriarchy, when was it introduced into the history books and into our understanding or misunderstanding of ancient Egypt?
I think it goes back thousands of years before academia represents. I did a lot of work in this, actually did a second master's degree in the evolution of matriarchies and matriarchal cultures, and that's what led me to understand that Egypt was a matriarchy, even long before I met Hakim. And what really attracted me to his teachings is he started talking matriarchy from the beginning. But as he explains it, as we understand it, it is wrong to believe that what patriarchy became was the father or the husband replacing the mother or the wife. That is not how it came. And we trace it back to what we see matriarchal influences in actually prehistorical cultures going back to the Upper Paleolithic 14,000 years ago. But it is recognized that true matriarchies come in around 8,000 BCE, which corresponds to the astrological age of Cancer, a matriarchal sign. We see in the archaeological record what are called Venus figurines, all these cultures worshipping goddesses or a mother figure. Matriarchy comes in. How it slides into patriarchy, again, goes with the cycles. We talk about the 5 cycles. We talk about coming into a cycle of Amen, which is separation. At the same time, you have the astrological ages of Taurus and then Aries. It is in the time of Aries, around 2000 BCE, where all cultures seem to be tending then to patriarchal influences. What happens here in Egypt is mainly the Greeks who come in and bring patriarchal influence. But what happens is, patriarchy is not the father or husband replacing the mother. What it is the son, S-O-N, replacing the mother. And as Hakim would teach, there's no one to blame. For a long time in the women's movement in America in the 70s and around the world, there was this blaming of men by women, that men had subjugated women in patriarchy. But what Hakim said is actually, you see in the archaeological record or in the mythological record or in the traditions, mother begins to push son forward and tell him, you're my good boy, you're my strong boy. So what happens as patriarchy is that the son supplants the mother. So all our deities in our modern patriarchal religions, like Judaism, like Christianity, like Islam, are sons, S-O-N, who replace the mothers. And in Egypt, of course, it's Horus replaces Isis, and Hathor replaces them as the deciding influence, and that's how it becomes patriarchal. And it's clearly, a clear influence in that was in the town square of the ancient city of Babylon. There was a statue of who had then become the state god Marduk, actually taking a sword and splitting his mother, Tiamat, in two. There's two interpretations of the statue. One actually symbolically showing the victory of patriarchy, the son, over the mother, and there's also a theory that actually represents an exploding planet, the planet that was between Mars and Jupiter, that we know is the Van Allen belt, that there was a planet there. Tom Van Flandern has supported that theory. Both are true. But actually what patriarchy was the son replanting the mother. And now it's time now that consciousness has come about, that the son no longer will be ruling. Mother right is coming back in, the goddess is being brought in, the so-called feminine netters, and there'll be more of a balance in the future, what we're coming to the new age, the awakening of masculine and feminine, male and female. That has to go one side to balance off the other side. We swung so far to patriarchy, it has to swing now to bringing back the goddess energy, the feminine energy, back to bring it back to where it needs to be. And as Hakim said, there's no one to blame. It's just the natural cycle. We fell out of consciousness when the only thing that mattered to the ancient Cometians was the Great Mother, Nut, who the Sphinx represents, Tefnut, the spit of Nut. The only image to them was the Great Mother, the creator of all there is, the creator of all that's uncreated. Then different aspects of what we call the netters come in, and religion comes to be. But when patriarchy takes over matriarchy, it's the son supplanting the mother. And that's why the influence here, the Greeks who were only interested in fathers and their sons, because that's their culture, so that's what they saw. They saw the people that were plastered on the walls in what are called cartouches. They thought these were titles of kings and their sons. Kings and their sons. So they create 33 dynasties of all of these different kings, and it's had nothing to do with the ancient culture. We talk about dynastic Egypt, but it's all Greco-Roman mythology. It was all just descent from the mother's house, and the male, usually a brother. There was no incest in this culture. A sister would choose a brother to be her consort to keep the family line together. And so basically what you see on the walls are brothers who've been ruling with their sisters. They are the Per'ah, and they've chosen him to be the Horus. And that's what's depicted on the walls, not a pharaoh.